Well, thank you, Scott, for agreeing to talk to Footy with Dad. The main reason I started Footy with Dad was when Jake was born 12 years ago. He unfortunately spent his first 11 months in hospital, mainly connected to a ventilator as he had severe respiratory issues. And I often sat daily next to him, hoping that one day he'd be well enough for me to take him to his first ever football match. And despite coming home after 11 months and enduring more operations, 4 years ago I was lucky enough to take him to his first ever match. He absolutely loved it. What were your childhood experiences of watching football?
So we loved it despite it being Spurs, didn't he? No, I'm joking. I remember, I think my mum and dad told me I had a ball as soon as I could crawl, let alone walk around me. And I used to have be kicking the ball all the time. My dad, massive football fan. I mean, his dream job would be being a scout for any of the teams or even non-league teams, just to go and watch football. So growing up, I was born in the Wirral. My dad's a big Liverpool fan, still is. My brother too. I was a Liverpool fan growing up. I'm not anymore. I kind of stopped when I was about 15, really, when I signed for Chelsea. Well, no, it was actually just a natural thing. There's a lot of players who still support the clubs that they initially supported. I kind of just naturally stopped just because I was playing for Charlton, and that was what I was concentrating on.
Sure.
You know, the clubs I look at now, the clubs that I played for, in terms of their results. But growing up, it was all Liverpool. King Kenny was my favourite player.
Sure.
And actually, I think the first game I ever went to was Blackpool Fulham, and that was because we moved down to London, sort of Kent really, when I was 3. And so Fulham obviously was a London club, but my dad was a massive Stanley Matthews fan as well.
Okay.
So obviously with Blackpool.
Sure.
And I have no idea now how old I was, but I could only have been about 6 or 7, something like that. But we went with a few of his friends and went to Craven Cottage. So that was the first sort of ground I ever went to.
Okay.
But I do remember when I was about 12, about Jake's age actually, we travelled up to Liverpool and to Anfield, and we saw Liverpool versus Aston Villa. And my dad had previously sent a message to Liverpool and just saying, look, we live in Kent, it's the first time ever my boy and I will be going to Anfield, we're big Liverpool fans, and is there any way you can mention something? You know, he wasn't expecting it at all. So first half, I can't remember what the half-time score was, I think it ended up 3-0. Half-time score, let's say 1 or 2-0, and we're just sitting there looking at the programme, having a chat, and suddenly it's a very warm welcome to Jim Minto and Scott Minto, who are here, travelled up from Kent.
Wow.
So, you know, and we were both stunned really, and it was amazing. It was really nice of the club to do that. Meant a lot at the time, and so I feel bad now I don't support them anymore. I don't. But yeah, it was a really nice touch, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, I've always been close to my dad, off the field as well as on, as it were. But you know, we talk football all the time, and obviously it was his dream to see his boy.
And you loved the emotional bond of going. Regularly.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't go week in, week out. Obviously, living in Kent, it's difficult to get up to Anfield. We did go to see some Liverpool games in London. But it was just an emotional thing. When we did go to the games, was great, but it was just an emotional thing as a father and son anyway.
Yeah.
You know, we had that football thing in common.
Sure.
You know, I was pretty decent as a footballer. I still didn't think I was going to be a professional. I'm sure he didn't think that either. But you know, we had a big thing in common, and that was football. So we've always had that bond, and I think I wouldn't say football has been the mainstay of it, because my father, I'm very close to as a father and son.
Sure.
But certainly that's one of the reasons, one of the bonds that we've got between us even now. We talk about football, I wind him up about Liverpool. He winds me up about Chelsea and West Ham or Charlton. You know, not so much Charlton actually, but yeah, no, it's good fun.
Excellent. And how do you think football has changed from going to football when you were a child, for children going to football nowadays?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, my kids now, I've got twins of 6 and a 7-year-old, so for the first 4 years I didn't sleep. But I've never taken them to a football match. I think they're still a little bit young at the moment, but also just the fact that I go to football regularly, and it's very much a work atmosphere. You can't take your kids. I'm not allowed to. Health and safety won't allow you to anyway. But I'd love to, and whether it be the girls or my boy, take one of them to a football match. But they need to really want it. 90 minutes is a long time if you're young.
Yeah.
But I always say to anybody who's not into football generally, not just a child or hasn't never been before, even if you don't like football, go to a football match, because the atmosphere is something else. You get a grip of it, and even a 0-0 or 1-0 can be really exciting just because of the atmosphere. But in terms of how it's changed for children, I'm not quite sure, to be honest with you, because as I say, I don't take the children. I think even if I did, I'd be very fortunate that I'd be able to get tickets, say at Chelsea and get good tickets as well. So I think it would be different. But even walking to and from the car at the stadium, whether it be with the kids or without, it actually takes me back to when I was a kid.
Of course.
And it makes me realise, as a professional footballer for almost 20 years, and also being in the media now for 10 years, that actually the real fan, how they are up for this, how they travel, what goes on around the stadium. Whereas when you're a player, certainly, and even to an extent in the media as well, you're very much cocooned by it all.
Oblivious to all that.
Yeah, so it really opens your eyes up again to what it really means for the fan.
No, definitely. And with the vast amount of money that's coming into the game, do you think clubs, not necessarily just the Premiership clubs, but do you think clubs in general should be doing more to get kids through the doors?
I've got to be honest with you, I don't know exactly what clubs do specifically in specific clubs, but I think it's pretty obvious in terms of community schemes, and I think the lower down you go, but even really high up you have it as well. They have to get the next generation, try to grab those youngsters, the next generation to come to the club. So, for example, I know for a fact Charlton do a heck of a lot, and they win awards for it as well, for what they do in the community on all levels.
No, sure.
But also the big clubs as well. I know Chelsea do, work hard on trying to get, and it's probably a bit different and difficult for Chelsea, because there's only a certain, they want to try and extend the stadium, which will be happening eventually. But there's only so many people that can get into the stadium. It's not as if there's 10,000 seats to fill and you can offer them out for a fiver. No. But certainly with other clubs, I think they kind of have to. I think they always, every club, every person has to look forward, not just stand still, and see what the future is. And the future is the youngsters growing up and trying to grab the next generation. Exactly.
Definitely. Now I read that some of the best players that you had played with were Di Canio and Zola. Who were the ones though that you didn't enjoy playing against?
Didn't enjoy playing against? Well, I think probably the man that gave me my toughest game ever in my career, I think, was Anders Limpar, and he was playing for Everton at the time. And he was one of those that could be hot and cold. Yeah. One day you hardly see him, but another day he could be very, very good. And I got him one day when he was very, very good. And he kind of ran me ragged, which was tough to take, because you've got your pride, and you don't want that to happen. Yeah. Another one I remember when I was at Charlton actually was Jimmy Carter. Okay. Now he used to play for Liverpool and Arsenal, as well as Millwall. He was playing at Millwall at the time. Very quick. Now I was quick when I was at Charlton. He was lightning. Really? And he went past me a few times as well. But then as you get, it's not even a little bit older, you just get a bit cleverer. You look at the winger, you see if he's quick. If he's quick, you realise you have to play a different way. Maybe even try to take him the other way, go forward a lot more. So I played against David Beckham, and David Beckham was very, very clever. He was very clever in the way that he wouldn't go past you for pace, but if he wasn't seeing much of the ball, he'd drift inside and he'd dictate play from midfield. And as a left back, do I go with it? Do I stay in my position? Or even if he was out wide, you try to get tight. He'd play one touch around you, and then you're not quite tight one time, and he'd touch and whip this wonderful cross in for Dwight York or Nicole and Teddy Sheringham, whatever, and then score. So he was a very clever player, a player I admire a lot. But I have to say, not the best player I played against, but the player that gave me my most difficult game of my career was Andy Minto.
Okay, fair enough. Now, growing up as a child, I played in the garden, pretending it was a cup final, and I know my son, who's behind the camera, also plays in his garden with me, pretending it's an FA Cup final. You've actually played in an FA Cup final. How good is that?
Do you know what? When I was growing up, I did exactly the same.
Yeah.
I played in the garden. We had a tree, and then we put down a jumper for the other goalpost.
Sure.
I'm one of three. I've got a brother and a sister. My sister would play with us as well. She was very good. But sometimes we'd chuck her in goal and tell her to be Ray Clements, because obviously we were Liverpool fans growing up. And so I've been there. I know what it's like to sort of dream about you playing in the FA Cup final, and it was a bit surreal actually playing in it. I didn't feel nervous at all. We were on a run in the cup where we came back from 2-0 down against Liverpool and beat them 4-2. We were literally seconds away from penalties against Leicester, and Erlen Jonsson, who was one of the toughest players and toughest men I've ever played with or against and met, and a top guy. Let's just say got a slight touch and went down, won a penalty. Frank Leboeuf stepped up, and from those two moments, the fourth and the fifth round, we beat Portsmouth very easily. I think it was 4-1 in the quarterfinals. We beat Wimbledon 3-0 in the semi-finals, and we're up against Middlesbrough. And we just thought, I've never really been one for superstition or anything like that, but the name on the cup really felt like that. And of course, when Robbie scored after 40-something seconds, we thought it was almost dangerous, because we kind of sat back a little bit and needed that second goal. But the preparation of it all, the suits, the media, travelling, to Wembley. Am I really doing this? I grew up in the 70s where it was a massive thing made of it, a whole day, and it was a little bit surreal walking out an hour before the game and looking at the pitch, and we're all there. This is Wembley, it's an FA Cup final, but never felt fazed by it, and just felt really focused. And we warmed up, came back in, carried on listening to some music that got me going, and I got a tap on the shoulder, and you better stop listening to that music now. But it was music that was getting me going. Yeah, I'm really up for it. And as I say, I think it would have been a travesty if we'd have lost it. While it wasn't the most exciting cup final, I think we were pretty much in control from start to finish. We needed that second goal to kill it off, but it was an amazing experience to play in front of 80,000 and know that millions around the world are watching you as well.
Sure.
And I still have a big affection for the FA Cup. I personally think the FA Cup would be great, that fourth spot, instead of giving it to a team.
No, I agree, 100%.
In the league, making the FA Cup that much more important. I think you then see everybody play their full strength side from the third round. I actually don't have a problem with that, but that's another issue. It was amazing. It was an amazing day, and I've had some great days in my career, but in terms of single days and single games in my career, that was the best.
No, that makes sense. And you say that wasn't the best of games. Growing up, one of the best games I've seen was West Ham 5, Bradford 4.
Yes.
Which was a mad game.
Crazy.
And obviously the thing that really sticks out is obviously Di Canio's outburst. With
was that the one where he wanted to come off?
Yeah, and I think he sat down.
Yes. Harry was pushing him back on, saying, "No, I'm not taking you off."
What was the atmosphere in the dressing room after that game?
No,
were there?
The backdrop to that was Paolo was getting a reputation for diving, and he was very clever. And maybe there were some times he was getting a touch that wasn't enough contact and went down, but he wasn't a diver. I mean, he was a fantastic player. And in that game, we had 3 stone wall penalties. And clearly the referee thought to myself, if he goes down, I'm not giving a penalty today. And it was wrong. The game itself, I think Shaka Hislop, our goalkeeper, came off after 20 minutes, and Stephen Bywater, who was only a youngster at the time, might have made his debut, might have played before, he came on. and the game was just to and fro. It was amazing in terms of scoreline. As I say, we had 3 penalties that should have been given, all on Paolo, and you know that he would score best penalty taker I ever played with. And he wasn't. I think by the 3rd one, he was hitting the ground and take me off, giving it one of those. Harry saying, no, you're not coming off, and kind of looking a bit like that, and But he was a fiery, hot-tempered Italian, but one of the best players I've ever played, quality player. Afterwards, you know what? We won the game. I think Stevie Bywater even admitted one time we scored straight from kick-off. The goal was put on the screen, big screen. He's looking at the screen as they've kicked off, and they've had a shot from the halfway line, and it's just gone over him and over the bar. So he learnt a lesson that day. But yeah, it was an amazing game. And one thing we had then at West Ham was an entertaining team. Yeah. I think even if we lost games, the fans would reasonably be happy because we had good players. They were given a role, and we'd win some, we'd lose some, but be good games, and that was one of the best of them. Yeah. Unfortunately, we won.
No, definitely. And you were, or still are, one of the few British players that decided to go abroad to play football. I know you love the experience. Do you think more British players should try?
I think nowadays it's a little bit more difficult because the lower end of the Premier League can offer pretty much anything apart from the real top end of Germany, France and Spain. It can offer anything any other teams can. So unless you've got a Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, a Juve, an Inter, not even an AC Milan anymore, unfortunately. Unless you've got a real top team coming in for you, the Premier League's the place to be from a financial level and even from a playing level. I mean, I love Spanish football. For me, the Clasico is the biggest game there is in the league. Yeah. But the league as a whole, the Premier League, for me, is the best league in the world. Actually, the Championship is the most competitive league in the world. But the English football, I think, is absolutely incredible. Nowhere else in the world you get second-tier games having the attendance we do. Third-tier, fourth-tier games. One thing I would say is, if you are good enough to be at one of the top teams, and even if it's a Sevilla or something like that, do it. Experience it. From a personal level as well as a professional one. I think a lot of people are scared of maybe going abroad and learning a language. I always like languages at school. My wife's Colombian, so I speak Spanish now. Right. I went to Portugal with 2 thoughts in my mind: 1, to be a success as a player, and 2, to learn the language. And I kept on plugging away in the Portuguese, even though they were fluent in English, half of them, and it was just, this is so much easier in English if I do it. But you've got to keep with it. And I just think, for me, the lifestyle as well. Yeah. Certainly living in Portugal.
Better weather.
I never wore tracksuit bottoms for one training session I was there. Not this type of weather. No. I mean, it would rain. It would rain, but it would still be warm. It was an amazing lifestyle. I feel blessed that I lived in a place like Cascais, Lisbon, Portugal. Not all foreign places, should we say, are as beautiful as that. But I would recommend it to anyone, and as I say, from a personal level as much as a professional one, to live abroad, to be a foreigner, to know what it's like to be a foreigner. Yeah. And I certainly know what it's like now when people come to England and people are saying, I should learn the language, you do this, you do that. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do. But yeah, amazing time. And I talk about Chelsea giving me the best day of my career. I think Benfica was the best time of my career. Because of the lifestyle and first training session on pre-season, 5,000 people watching. Yeah. One pre-season game, they call it a presentation game. Red carpet, interviewing you all individually with the spotlights. 80,000 people there against Lazio. Just an amazing time, it really was.
Excellent. And you've obviously played for some great names. Kerbishley, Hoddle, Hullet, Souness. I won't ask you and put you on the spot who was the best one, but how did they differ? I mean, obviously as a Spurs fan, how was Hoddle?
God. I mean, he was. I don't put Glenn in top 3 of the best players I ever played with. But that is Zola, Hullet, and Di Canio. But what I would put Glenn as number one, the most technical player I ever played with.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to have a thing in training where he was still a player manager at the time, and the reason I don't is because Glenn had injury problems and he was coming towards the end of his career.
Sure.
But we had this thing in training every day in the warm-up where Peter Shreves would take it, and it would be 3 touches and you have to keep the ball up, so it might be foot, thigh, shoulder, foot, thigh, shoulder. So everyone else do that, or outside of the left foot, shoulder, outside of the right foot, outside left foot, and basically Glenn was the only one who could do it. Left foot, right foot, technically unbelievable. And you know what? He had a fantastic mind as well. I know it was said, and I think it was probably right then, that he didn't quite have the patience then, and when he went on to England as well. But technically, tactically, he was absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
He was really, you know, you could see not just a top class player, but a real thinker of the game.
Football brain.
And I've said from before Roy, before Sam, and before Gareth that he should be the next England manager. I don't care how long he's been out of the game. You don't have to be a club manager. Not for someone like Glenn anyway to be the England manager. And I think he would still make a fantastic job, and he would still be, after Gareth, and Gareth deserves his going, my choice for the next England manager.
Okay, fair enough. That's good to hear. You've played in front of crowds of 40, 50, 60, maybe even more. What's more nerve-wracking, doing that or the few seconds before you're about to go live on TV in front of millions?
It's a really good question, actually, because it's very different, but it's very similar. You know, the spotlight.
You're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own.
Yeah.
It's like an individual sport, and it's you. And when you get those seconds counted down, you know, in the beginning when I first started with the Spanish, I didn't really know much about presenting. Certainly not on live games. Spanish football didn't know much about, not in terms of the league. And the missus had just had twins, so I was on 4 hours sleep a night for years. It wasn't easy, and when you're not sure of something, it can be difficult. You know what I would say, in the beginning it was hard, but like anything, I'm a great believer, and I think modern society now is all the here and now, and judging you on the here and now, and people wanting things here and now. You know, if you want something, it takes time, and you've got to work hard at it, trust yourself, and go with it, and have that long-term thought pattern.
Sure.
And now, you know, it's like my missus telling me she's counting down to me to go and make the bed. No, she doesn't really have to. It's great. You're looking forward to it. You know, we're speaking now. We just done the Villa Birmingham game. And I was really looking forward to it. It was in the tunnel area before the game, and it was great fun. So you're counting down, and you want to get your teeth stuck into it. In the beginning, it was nerve-wracking, but you know, now it's really enjoyable and good fun.
Excellent. Well, as I say, I started Footy with Dad because of obviously my son's experience, and one of our main aims is to get underprivileged, ill and bereaved children to football matches. I've now set up our website, FootieWithDad.com, and there is a donation page on there where people can obviously donate to help more children experience the thrill of going to a game. You've obviously achieved a lot in your career. You've played for some massive clubs in the Premiership, abroad, FA Cup final, now successful Sky presenter.
Keep talking.
What would your advice be to an aspiring child who not necessarily wanted to succeed in football, but obviously wanted to succeed in life? What would your advice be?
I think basically what I just said now. I think we live in a world of everything's instant. People either want to be famous now, or they want lots of money now, or they want to be successful now, and they're not willing to put in the hard yards. And actually there's very few people who are able to do that. I think the people who, if you look at the successful people, they're the ones who literally day by day by day put the hard yards in. And quite often, and you can talk footballers in here as well, you know, training days like this where it's horrible, it's it's not glamorous to be training at the training ground on a day like this, but you're working to the maximum everything you can, and whether it be professional football or setting up your own business or a child at school trying to learn English, maths, whatever, it's just about being the best you can be. I say to my children, I want 3 things from you: to try your best, to never give up, and to know that it's okay to make mistakes. To not be worried about making mistakes. So I think once you're worried about making mistakes, you don't push yourself even further. You're inhibited a little bit. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, but just try your best. Everything you do, whether it be making a cup of tea, whether it be making the bed, whether it be whatever, try and do the best you can. If you can instill those type of high standards in yourself, then when it comes to the bigger things, that will come naturally.
No, fair enough. Scott, thank you so much for stopping by, talking to us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.